G'day, I'm Nurchin, and today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the bunyip. This is going to be the first episode of a cryptozoology mini-series, and I thought where better to start than the Australian outback. I'm going to break it up into some subcategories of what is it, what does it look like, what does it do, is it real, and where can I find one. I'll be sure to timestamp those and I'll put my bibliography down below. Well, let's jump into it. The bunyip is a large creature from Australian folklore dating well before the British settlers even arrived. They first found out about it from indigenous stories, and at the time they just found the platypus and the kangaroo, so the notion of a large water-dwelling monster wasn't that unlikely. This creature inhabited lakes, lagoons, rivers, creeks, and any kind of remote body of water. What a bunyip might look like, or what it is exactly, is kind of dependent on what region of Australia you're talking about. It's believed the word bunyip came from the Wemba Wemba or Wagaya language, from the indigenous people of the Western Murray River. The word was first published in 1845 by a newspaper called the Geelong Advertiser. The article was called Wonderful Discovery of a New Animal. This article addresses the discovery of a fragment of the knee joint of some gigantic animal. When they showed these bones to the local Aboriginal people, they all responded that those were the bones of a bunyip, and they went on to describe it for how it's known today. After this article, other newspapers started to report on the story and the word bunyip spread. This may explain why the word bunyip can be found in so many regions with so many different descriptions. You see, there was a strong language barrier between the settlers and the indigenous people at the time, so while each language or region may have had their own variant, the word bunyip was kind of used as a blanket statement or a mistranslation. So, what does the bunyip look like? In each region it was described as a large beast that inhabited water, had shaggy fur and bright eyes, but that's kind of where the similarities end. Other descriptions include a dog-like face, a crocodile-like head, dark sleek fur, black shaggy hair, a horse-like tail, walrus-like tusks, horns, duck-like bill, deadly claws, powerful hind legs, a brightly coloured chest, emu-like head, serrated projections on bill, a body of an alligator with long forearms, covered in dusty feathers, body of enormous starfish, wings, fins, flippers, claws, alligator scales, and a long neck. While all these descriptions seem random and unhelpful, they all kind of tie together to explain a lot about what this creature may have been. And as to why this creature was never found, killed, or captured was simply, when people saw it, they'd turn around and ran. Another reason people didn't see it is because the bunyip was supposedly very reclusive, and as the settlements expanded, it was pushed further into the outback, but that kind of falls under more the category of what does it do. So know what you may be thinking, I know exactly what a bunyip looks like, but what does it do? Well, that one's a lot easier to answer. The creature is very reclusive and rarely seen by humans, but there seems to be a recurring pattern in the behaviours of this creature. It spends its days swimming, hunting for fish and eel, and sunbathing by the water. While it's said to spend most of its time hiding, it's also known to let out a bellowing roar when people get too close. But if these people continue, it simply slips beneath the water without so much as a ripple. But how this creature interacts with humans varies greatly depending on region. There are stories of the bunyip being a peaceful water spirit that stays hidden out of mutual respect for the people. Then there are other more common stories of the bunyip being a murderous apex predator. Its abilities range between physical to supernatural depending on the story. There are stories of the bunyip filling waterways with fish as to lure in nearby hunters, and when their guard is down, grabbing them and dragging them beneath the water. It supposedly could kill people by grabbing them with its strong forearms, slashing them with its claws, or biting them with its strong tusks. Some supposed survivors were found with slashes across their limbs and chest, but a lot of the victims appeared to be hugged to death beneath the water. Now in some of the more extreme cases, it could supposedly flood the land with water, making it hard for its victims to run away. So here we are, is the bunyip real? Some of you, using what we've learnt so far, may be able to piece together what you think it may be. Basically, the reason there were so many descriptions for what the bunyip may have been is because people kept mistaking Australian fauna with the bunyip. If we look at some of this creature's descriptions, you may be able to notice some recurring patterns that may point to some more likely or less likely creatures in Australia. One of the most obvious is the crocodile. Large shapes moving through the water, slipping beneath the surface with hardly a ripple, and the descriptions of the attacks all point to this prehistoric creature. Even in Australia today, crocodiles are very capable of killing humans, especially when you encroach on their territory, that being large bodies of water.
But I ain't spending any time on it, because in the meantime, every 3 months, a person is torn to pieces by a crocodile in North Queensland.
So you may be thinking the crocodile seems a little too obvious, and they wouldn't have been able to start the rumours by themselves. Well, that's when we get to our next suspect. With sleek black fur, dog-like face and flippers, our next suspect is the seal. High tides and floodwaters sometimes cause sea lions or fur seals to get caught in rivers or even smaller bodies of water. While not necessarily aggressive creatures, they have been known to attack humans, or at least enough to scare them out of the water. This may also explain the roaring noise that would have been unfamiliar to inland people at the time. And on that note of strange bellow, that leads us to our next culprit. This is the Australasian bittern. You may have realised that doesn't look anything like a giant water-dwelling monster, and well, that's because it isn't. But if you're out trekking in the Australian marshland and heard a strange booming sound, then you may jump to some strange conclusions. I don't really see it personally, but this booming noise fooled people for years and earned this bittern the nickname the bunyip bird. And this wouldn't be the last case of mistaken avian identity as we look to some of the stranger descriptions of the bunyip. A certain Australian animal might spring to mind when you hear the descriptions: horn, emu-like head, dusty feathers, brightly coloured chest, powerful hind legs, and deadly claws. That is, of course, the southern cassowary. These giant birds live around rainforests and swamps, and there's been many recordings over the years of them able to kill humans with their giant talons. Most of their bodies are covered in these dusty feathers, and from behind could probably pass as this creature from legend. But the evidence doesn't end with just sightings and stories. There have been many discoveries of giant bones throughout Australia that the Indigenous people were always very quick to label the bunyip. And I'm not talking about the bunyip skull from the Australian Museum in 1847 that just turned out to be a deformed calf skull. See, these bones were huge, easily fitting the description of the bunyip. But paleontologists were quick to dismiss these. It turns out that Australia was once home to many large dinosaurs, including the Diprotodon.
Diprotodon.
Nailed it. It may have been these large creatures that led to the original stories of the bunyip and were remembered today through this thing called cultural memory. Now this, in my opinion, is the origin of the bunyip. Many years ago, these creatures formed the foundation of the bunyip, and as they slowly died out, it was chalked up to the reclusive nature of the bunyip. By the time the settlers even arrived in Australia, the Diprotodon has probably entirely died out, but the stories for the bunyip were useful for explaining a lot of the bizarre occurrences in early Australia. Just because somebody says they've already got a name for a creature doesn't mean that the name from another culture is wrong. Which is why I think the Diprotodon and the bunyip are effectively one and the same. So at this point your hopes of finding the bunyip may have been dashed, but fear not. Sightings of the bunyip continue even until this day. Are they more occurrences of mistaken identity? Have prehistoric creatures managed to survive just avoiding human eyes? Or maybe the bunyip is just a water-dwelling spirit and it's as present as it ever was. Luckily, I know a man who happens to know how to follow some leads and hopefully can find you a bunyip. And now I'll pass you on to my field reporter, my resident cryptozoologist, Wendell Elmwood. Over to you, Wendell.
Thank you, Nurchin, and hail and well met to my fellow crypto enthusiasts. We're not going to have any luck here looking for the bunyip in the burbs, so we're going to have to travel out to Lake George, one of the last known locations of the bunyip. Let's go.
Lake George, located a few kilometers north of Canberra, holds one of the last known sightings of the bunyip. In 1866, the New South Wales Road Guide warned to be careful of a large water monster that occasionally surfaces for air, after sightings were reported of a Loch Ness-style monster. The lake itself is strange in nature, with its water levels constantly changing between a few meters deep or bone dry.
Where's the water?
Do bunyips do that? No? I've travelled here today with my trusty cameraman Rob in hopes of finding this beast. So, to find a bunyip of your own, here's what you need to do. First, be very quiet as to not scare it away. Listen for its howl, and maybe bring some bait. I've brought along some fillet McFishes maybe to lure him out later.
Are those bunyips?
Now, if for some reason you are looking for one of the dangerous ones, just remember, the bunyip is said to prey mainly on women or children. It's more likely to attack during the day, especially if your guard is down, and don't forget to run.
Excellent that we've found this waterhole. It's a great start for our bunyip. Oh. It appears the water level has started to rise, which means we've found one of the more aggressive bunyips. Rob, time to go. Go, Rob, go.